Christian parenting.
Welcome to the Bible for Kids podcast with your hosts, best-selling children's author Amy Parker and author and co-creator of VeggieTales, Mike Nawrocki. If instilling biblical values in kids is important to you, this podcast will give you the resources, wisdom, and hope to do just that. Now, let's join our hosts, Amy and Mike, for this week's episode.
Welcome back to the Bible for Kids podcast. I'm Amy Parker.
And I'm Mike Nawrocki, and today we have Lexi Young Pack on the show, and we're going to talk to her about her adorable new book that helps kids with fear and anxiety. But first, we'd like to start every episode of the Bible for Kids podcast with a Bible verse. So, Amy?
So this one's a little different. Usually it's like those inspirational quotes, but I just love this one, especially on the topic that we're talking about today. Then war broke out in heaven. This is from Revelation. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon and his angels fought back. But he was not strong enough, and they lost their place in heaven. The great dragon was hurled down, that ancient serpent called the devil or Satan, who leads the whole world astray. That's from Revelation 12, 7 through 9.
And that's got to be like the New Life or New Living.
New Living. Yeah, that's New Living.
Yeah, exactly. Sounds friendly.
Yes.
Yeah. So Lexi Peck is one of 6 children and the daughter of William Paul Young, the author of The Shack. She was raised and still resides in the Pacific Northwest on a farm, raising cattle with her husband, Josh, and their 2 children, Vivian and Xander. She graduated summa cum laude from Portland State University with a BA in psychology, centering her studies on childhood development. Her passion to deeply understand how children develop and thrive in the world became a driving focus. Lexi became a children's author with the intention of passing on her insight to those who are hoping to engage parenting to the fullest. Lexi's first children's book, What Do You Say to a Dragon?, was born out of a real-life situation with her daughter, Vivian, waking from a recurring nightmare. Lexi, welcome to the Bible for Kids podcast. So great to have you on.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited.
So Lexi, we usually start with a little background. And for you, that means, of course, asking about having William Paul Young as a father. Listeners, if that name sounds really familiar, it's because he wrote the novel The Shack, as we mentioned in the bio, which also became a film. So how old were you when all of that happened? And what was it like? And how did it shape or inspire your career?
So I was pretty young. I was still just out of middle school, right about middle school. And we had gotten to a place financially where we pretty much were walking. My mom was walking to work. We had friends picking us up for school because we didn't have gas to get there. My dad was working 3+ jobs. Some of them were overnight cleaning toilets. We lived in a 2-bedroom, like 900 square foot apartment or a house with 6 of us. So we all.
I was going to say, are there 6 children, 8 of you, or 4 children?
Yeah, so there's 6 children,
Wow.
But at the time it was just 4 of us living in the house.
Okay.
Yeah. So the two of them were married at that point.
Okay.
But
Thank
we made
goodness,
a room Yeah, we made like a fake room out of the basement. It wasn't finished, but that's where the boys were, and me and my sister shared a room. So we were all very close. We had found a rhythm of just being grateful for what we had. I have really good memories of that period of time. And my dad would go into Portland, and we would live right next to the MAX train. So he would go get on the MAX and he would write. And we didn't know he was doing that. We didn't expect a book to come for Christmas. But a cool little side story is that he didn't have enough money to print it for Christmas. And there was one day that an envelope showed up right before Christmas with money in it, cash. And he was like, I don't know where this came from, but he took the money and went and printed copies for us for Christmas as our gift. And years later, we actually met the man who had dropped that money off. It was a total stranger. He just felt like the Lord was calling him to give a gift to somebody. He saw our house and put that money on the doorstep.
Wow.
And,
incredible.
Yeah.
That is. And really, oddly somewhat like the shack, which the man who dropped off the envelope probably did not even know existed, I'm assuming. So what a cool full circle kind of story. There should be a book about the book behind the shack.
Exactly. It's very interesting.
That's so cool.
And it doesn't seem like that long ago either. I don't know.
Right.
I'm just getting old, I think. It just seems to me, it's like, oh yeah, the other day when the shack came out.
Yes, I know it does feel like that. It's pretty crazy, but it is fun. I think for myself, I watched that experience of when there's something that God wants to get to people in the world, he will do it. Yeah. And there are ways that we have no idea how it's even possible. Yeah. And so for myself, I kind of, the children's book that I wrote started out as a poem for adults. I watched my daughter experience something that I knew myself I had to learn as well. And so originally the poem was created for adults. And it was just kind of through friends who had read it. And one friend in particular, who now is my agent, Wes Yoder, he asked me if he could give it to publishers and see if there was any child publishers that would want to take it and make it into that format. And so we found Tyndale. So that's I feel kind of a connection to my dad in that way of like, I wasn't trying to push being an author. It wasn't really my plan. I love being a mother. It's my favorite job. I stay at home with my kids. And like you said, we have a farm now, so I'm very busy. And that's just kind of where my focus was. So I felt at some point an internal like, oh no, what if I'm supposed to get this out there and I'm not doing what I need to do? And then my dad's topic of that he always came back to was God telling him, walk, don't run. And I felt the same piece of like, just walk, don't run. I'm taking care of this. Like, you just sit back. You've done what you need to do. And when I need you, you'll know it. Like, you don't have to make it happen.
Yeah. And, at least kind of move in that direction, but you're not in a hurry, but, just like God's got it under control, and I'm being faithful and moving in the direction that he's leading me in. I love
exactly.
that.
And that's such great advice for writers too. I was just going to say, if there are any writers out there listening, walk, don't run is such great advice, because so many of them that I talk to, they want to be published tomorrow and have the best-selling author and, best-selling book out there. And that consistent, steady walk, I think, gets you a lot further than trying to rush into something that, one, you're probably not ready for. And two, and some people do have that sort of overnight thing that happened, but, it's because I think so many times it's because that's when God is ready for it. So walk, don't run is excellent advice, probably for a lot of things, but definitely writing.
Especially if you have scissors.
Yes.
So, Lexi, you have two children, Vivian and Xander. How old are they?
So Vivian is 6 years old.
Okay.
And Xander is 3. And I'm actually, today I'm 28 weeks pregnant with my third.
Oh my goodness. Oh, congratulations. Oh my goodness.
Thank you.
So you're not busy at all as a mom
no,
the house.
Not at all.
Well, and then there was also that little thing in the bio that we just kind of skimmed over about you raising cattle. Like, we just kind of ignored that part, but that's probably kind of a big deal.
In 10 years, you're going to have, kids to milk the cows, but right now.
Exactly. We do have our little farm hands. My daughter is very engaged in the farming, and it has been, we've only, like I said, we've been here for 6 months, and we've already full throttle gone into cows escaping and cold nights where the kids are ready to eat, but there's a cow out, so we have to chase the cow before we can.
You can't eat when there's a cow out.
Exactly. It's like there's so many lessons we've already learned in such a short period of time, and it's been amazing.
So an experience with Vivian inspired you to write What Do You Say to a Dragon? Can you tell us about that experience with Vivian?
Yes. So she is, she's not naturally a brave child. She kind of is hesitant about she thinks about things and then is hesitant before she will try them. We really have to carry her brave first, and then she has to kind of enter into it knowing that we wouldn't put her somewhere she's not ready for. Mm-hmm. So that's something that we've been cultivating, especially on the farm, but I hadn't gotten there yet. I still had the idea that I could be brave for her fully, and she would trust me enough to not feel the fear herself. Mm-hmm. So when she kept waking up with the recurring nightmare, the only toolbox I had was comfort and reassurance and telling her that there's nothing in here that's like can get you, you're safe. And it wasn't working. And so I finally, it had been happening over and over again. And so I asked my husband, I was like, I need your help. Like, she keeps waking up. Obviously what I'm doing, I have the best intention. It's just not working. So he went in and he had a conversation with her where he created power for her to enter into her fear and to face it and talk to it. Mm-hmm. And the simple idea of changing the dialogue where she actually could harness a power and a bravery inside of herself and extend that into a nightmare that she felt powerless in, changed everything for her. And she had woken up, I think it was the next night or a couple nights afterwards, and said, you know, that dragon, it was after the Super Bowl and there was the dragons in the commercials, and that's what had gotten her.
Oh, that's what got her. Oh, yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And she was like, that dragon came back, but you know what I did? I talked to that dragon, and you know what happened, Mommy? I didn't even have to wake you up. I was able to go right back to sleep. Aww. And she does that now throughout, like every once in a while, she'll be like, I had a nightmare, but I talked to it, and you know what? It worked. And so that's how that all came together as moving in the direction of, oh my goodness, I need to do that as an adult. I need to see a dragon and I need to stand and face it instead of trying to cultivate someone else's bravery. Like I do already have it inside of me.
So we're going to talk a lot more about that, but we're going to take a short break first, and we'll be right back on the Bible for Kids podcast.
My Arms Will Hold You Tight, a whimsical board book from mother-daughter writing duo Crystal Bowman and Terry McKinley, is filled with masterful rhymes and beloved animals, including llamas, elephants, sloths, and fun surprises like bats and flamingos, that brings the tenderness of heartfelt love between baby animals and their parents to life. A perfect gift, this book will appeal to the whole family and is sure to be a favorite book of mom, dad, grandma, grandpa, and other caregivers to read to their precious little ones. My Arms Will Hold You Tight is available now wherever books are sold.
From the creators of the 1-year daily acts of friendship comes 100 daily acts of friendship for girls. Strong, healthy friendships offer a safe place for girls to be themselves and share their deepest feelings. But how do they build lasting friendships? One of the key ingredients to having good friends is learning to be a good friend. Designed for girls 8 to 12, 100 Daily Acts of Friendship for Girls teaches what God says about friendship and will give them practical, everyday tips for developing lifelong relationships. Each devotion includes a scripture verse, a short story about friendship, questions to ponder, and a daily act of friendship section with ideas for living out what they have learned. Girls will not only learn how to develop godly friendships with others, but will discover how to be friends with Jesus, the friend who will never disappoint and will always stand beside them. 100 Daily Acts of Friendship for Girls is available wherever books are sold.
With the tenderness of a mother speaking directly to her child, best-selling author Karen Kingsbury uses her heartwarming book, Let Me Hold You Longer, to remind us that the years of childhood fly too quickly by us. Most of us faithfully remember and capture our children's firsts. Karen encourages readers to try to recognize and savor the often fleeting lasts, the last days of kindergarten and last at-bats in Little League amid the whirlwind of life. This poignant reminder has taken on a whole different meaning as families have adapted to quickly changing circumstances in a pandemic, and in some cases, let go of everyday routines while experiencing many unexpected lasts. This book makes a perfect gift for baby showers, new moms, seasoned moms, recent graduates, and anyone else who needs a reminder to savor the last moments of childhood. Let Me Hold You Longer is available wherever books are sold. Welcome back to the Bible for Kids podcast, and Amy and I are speaking with Lexi Young Pack.
We were talking earlier, which I think is a pretty profound concept of talking down our dragons. And I purposefully used that scripture quote from Revelation because I had just read it the other day. And then I thought that just ties in perfectly with this book. And it says, it describes Satan as the dragon that leads the world astray. And I think anxiety is one of those things. And so talk to us about how anxiety is one of those ways that we're led astray.
Yeah, so one of the reasons that we moved to the farm was because I believe that there is a period of time when you are sitting and you don't have a ton that you're engaged in. There's nothing that's pulling you into life that's bigger than you. And the way that we've experienced animals on the farm is that if they need something, you have to engage them. And taking care of their needs, making sure that they're raised well, making sure that everything, the details of their day are taken care of, have pulled us all out of the idle mindset. And I think that's one of the things that time feels like it's always slipping by. And I was talking to my husband the other day. The house that we came from was 1,000 square feet. It was small. I was able to manage everything in a timely fashion. At the end of the day, I would sit there and be like, okay, I'm done. I'm a stay-at-home mom. I don't really have a ton of stuff to do. And it actually gave me time to sit and worry and look at stuff that was creating fear and anxiety in the world that I had no control over. There was nothing I could do. And I truly believe that also happens with our kids. I had given them so much time that they just were like, all right, now, like, I need something to do. Like, I'm going to bug my sibling because I have no more, there's nothing else for me to engage in. And that has been something that we've cultivated on the farm and noticed is the freedom that it offers, the responsibility that already our 6-year-old engages in. She is out there with her dad every single morning. We're all up early. Me and the little one, Xander, will sometimes make breakfast. Sometimes he'll head out with them. But I think that one of the things that is most profound for me is noticing I felt like I had no time when I was in a space where I actually had quite a bit of time. I just felt like there was something else within me that needed to be expanded upon. And here, I don't have the time to sit and to have an idle mind that allows me to enter down rabbit trails. Mm. And it's also shown me how much I am capable of that I wasn't pushing myself to experience before. And I see that in my daughter too. She has expanded so much in her little 3-4 months of actually being really fully engaged here on the farm, of just saying like, there are things that I watch adults not be able to do. And here I am, a 6-year-old who is able to manage chickens and take care of their food and their water and moving them. And I just think there's something really experiential that we can gift to ourselves and to our kids when we say, there's a power inside of me that is so much greater than I even realize. What would it look like if I took on even more responsibility for the things that really truly mattered to me? And what would that look like for my kids? And what would that look like for the time that I feel like I don't have? All of those things have changed the way that I've experienced myself and my anxiety and my worry. I simply don't have time to sit and worry as much. And I think that is a gift that has been given to me for finding something beyond myself, that I've pushed the level of responsibility that I had no idea I was even capable of.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. I was just thinking, it's like that old saying, idle hands are the dragon's workshop, right?
That's right.
Speaking of dragons, that same scripture also talks about the dragon's ultimate defeat. And so getting back to the book, without giving too much away, how does the child in your story defeat the fear of the dragon? You may have touched on this a little bit already.
Yeah, there's an engagement of your own power. And there's a quote, I can't remember exactly what it is, but it is something to the effect of, we actually fear the immense power that's within our children. It's not we're not afraid of what they're capable of. We're not afraid of what they can't do. We're afraid of how much power they actually have and what they can do. Mm-hmm. And that has been something that we work on building in our kids, of saying, not only do you have what it takes inside of you, but you don't even have any idea how deep that goes. Mm-hmm. And that's where, in the story, the child is shown that it's not mom and dad who's going to protect you forever. They're not going to be able to save you from everything. And it's not possible to tell our children that nothing is going to be scary. And I think with COVID and everything that's happened, we have come to more of a realization of how true that is. If there's something that comes and faces our children, we can't deny it forever. We can't say that it's not real. And so how are you going to build those blocks for your children of saying, here's something that will possibly happen. Like when you're learning to do something new, you might fall, you might get hurt, and you might experience pain, but it's still something that is worth entering into, because on the other side of learning is experiencing, and I can't experience for you. It's your job to do that for yourself. And so I think that's what I'm trying to convey in this story, is when you can experience that for yourself, the amount of freedom that comes as an individual comes from yourself. It doesn't come from me. And it was inside of you. It's not something I'm giving you or I'm covering you in. So.
Yeah. And I found that's really hard to do as a parent, because, we want to protect our kids from harm and, make sure nothing bad happens to them. And in doing that, I realized the thing in the points in my own life when I've gone through struggles and challenges and have overcome those, just the confidence that gives me and, just the growth that I go through when that happens is a great lesson. And, why keep that from our children?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. We've even focused on the prayers that we say over our kids, because I realized I was praying for peace, for safety, for comfort, for, it was a prayer of, maintaining a level of safe. And so I recognize that as what we've been trying to do with our children, is say exactly what I was just saying. I can't always keep you from those things. So even in the language we use when we're praying over our children, of now, I've focused more on, I pray that they would be adventurers who seek something and find what they're looking for, who see something that feels too big, but understands the power that they hold, that they can overcome. Like switching up language, even the way that we speak over our children, they will grab onto and remember. Like I remember from when I was little, the prayer that was our nighttime prayer, I remember the words, I remember the rhythm. And so those things, they hold on to our hearts, and they do carry with us as we grow.
So we're going to come back and talk more about that. But right now we're going to take another quick break on the Bible for Kids podcast.
Kids have a lot of questions about God, faith, and the Bible. Why did Jesus come to earth? Who wrote the Bible? What is faith? If you're looking for a great resource to answer some of kids' toughest questions, check out The Big Book of Bible Questions by best-selling author Amy Parker and apologist Doug Powell. With sound theology in kid-friendly terms, Amy and Doug tackle 60 questions covering the Old and New Testaments. The vibrant, playful pictures bring each answer to life and make this book even more fun for kids to read on their own. Plus, you'll love having this book at your fingertips during your family devotions or for those moments when you might need some help with answering your child's questions. The Big Book of Bible Questions is available now from your favorite bookseller.
One boy plus 2 rehydrated squirrels equals hilarious adventures in the Dead Sea Squirrels books, written by Mike Nawrocki. 10-year-old Michael Gomez finds 2 petrified squirrels while exploring a cave in Israel and stows them into his backpack, the perfect souvenirs from his trip. Or so he thought. When the squirrels get rehydrated during a rainstorm, Michael comes face to face with the rather chatty couple, Merle and Pearl Squirrel, who witnessed Jesus' teachings 2,000 years ago. Hilarious missteps and misadventures happen throughout the series as Michael and his friends navigate life, while Merle and Pearl offer wisdom along the way in their own squirrel style. The first 6 books in the Dead Sea Squirrels series are available at your favorite bookseller, and be sure to look for the Dead Sea Squirrels 3-book starter pack, which makes a great gift for kids who love to laugh and read at the same time.
Welcome back to the Bible for Kids podcast, and Amy and I are speaking with Lexi Young Pack.
So Lexi, we talked about the dragon scripture in Revelation, but I know there are other things, the Bible says so much about fear and anxiety. So what are other passages, or how else can the Bible inform how we respond to fear and anxiety?
So I had the privilege of doing a YouVersion devotional. It's currently up right now. And I really explored this idea because it was something that I hadn't put a ton of time and thought into. And I found it very interesting that within the Bible, it says 365 times, do not be afraid. And that's pretty much a time for every day of the year. Like, he called people into adventure and said, I am with you. Do not be afraid. Even though the knee-jerk reaction is like, whoa, this is not necessarily what I'm wanting, or are you sure I'm actually able to do this? But there is such a strong calling to that, that I found that really interesting. It's not something that I had noticed before. I knew that it was in there. I just didn't know how prevalent it was. Mm-hmm. And so I think that there's no fear. Perfect love casts out fear. All of those verses that bring us back to the idea that the God who loves us has entered into our being, even if we don't understand and even if we don't know it. And you can see it initially in a newborn who begins to do something new, crawls, learns to walk. We can see those things innate within our kids. The thing that is tricky is going from a child who gets cheered on for walking to a child who gets sat down for climbing. And so
Ouch.
And so for me, I thought, okay, if we can't obviously let our kids do whatever they want, that's not going to be safe. It's not going to be smart. And it's not wisdom, which is what we're also called to have, is the wisdom and discernment of what is true and real in the world. So I believe that there's a ton of time it takes to raise small children. It takes creativity and it's strategy. And so if you have a climber, you can either tell them to sit and stay because it's easier for me not to watch you maybe fall, or I can figure out an area that I've decided in my mind, like, okay, I am okay with this situation of climbing and I'm going to put you into it. And you're going to feel like it is me saying, like, I trust you completely. And in your mind, you're saying, I've created every boundary so that if you fall over here, you're not going to hit your head on the wall, but I don't have to tell you that.
And that's why you're wrapped in bubble wrap.
You can't move, but you can climb. And so I feel like pulling that into what does it mean for me as a parent? What does it mean for me for myself of do not be afraid with strategy. Do not be afraid with discernment. And we have to place that discernment into our children, not necessarily through our words, but through how we guide them in exploring what they want and that curiosity that's naturally there. And for some children, they are not as brave and they don't care to climb and they don't care to go up on heights. But to realize that too, and to say, I'm your parent who sees that if I keep you in a stroller strapped in for too long, your legs are not going to become strong enough to do the things that you're going to want to do. And so if I know that I'm holding you in a place that's not helpful, I'm going to create an environment where you can step on the low bar of the balance beam so that one day you can get on that high bar and you can do the things you want, instead of not allowing you to even work your way up to those positions and then all of a sudden one day expect that you should be there, because that's not fair either.
Yeah.
And that inevitably will happen. You have children that should have been given the skills and the tools, and then once they get to a certain age, you expect that they have them. But if you haven't put foresight into those for them, how are they supposed to learn? So I think that is what God was doing with people in the Bible all the time, of like, I see this high bar for you, and right now you feel like you can't even get on the low bar that's not even off the ground. But I'm going to tell you, do not be afraid, because my plan for you is up there. And I'm not just going to ask you to jump onto something that's way too high for you right now. So I'm going to start you on the ground, and we're going to slowly work our way up.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm reminded we have a boy, he's almost 20 now, but, he was kind of always without fear. And, when he was a toddler, as soon as he could walk, he started to find new and interesting ways to attempt to kill himself.
Yes.
So,
I have one of those.
It was like, what? No. But it's a great I mean, so like, for instance, he would ride his bike, instead of learning how to use the brakes, he would just dive into the bushes to stop.
Oh my God.
But it's great. I mean, so, finding a way to kind of find the balance there and tame that, to keep that same adventurous spirit, but,
yes,
not tamp it down too much is a challenge, but it's great. It's a great trait to have. So, so you have a degree in psychology and a background in child development. We mentioned that at the top of the show, but, and we've heard kind of how some of this has weaved in, but can you elaborate a little bit about how that's informed the way you wrote this book, with that background?
Yes. So where I fell in my family line, I have a massive family on my mom's side, tons of cousins, tons of aunts and uncles. But I was kind of in this weird spot where my cousins above me were 3 years older and plus, and then my cousins below me were boys, and they were kind of I didn't want to play with them. I wanted to play with the older ones, but I wasn't invited to play. And so I found this weird middle ground of being left alone, but then the babies would come to the holidays. And that's exactly where I found my rhythm and my groove. And I loved it. I loved being around babies. I loved taking care of them. I loved nurturing them. I loved that I could make them stop crying and nobody else could. It was like my little niche of where I fit. And so childhood development for me started at a really early age. I looked at the way that babies would stare at you for so long, and I noticed that after about 5 to 10 seconds, their pupils dilate. And I thought, I wonder why they do that. That's so weird. But then I was like 10, and so I didn't even think about it.
Was there graph paper involved? Were you charting this on graph paper?
Nope. It was just all in the mind. I had a lot of time to think. I didn't have many people to play with. So I just sat there with them and stared at them. And
creepy cousin.
Yes. I was always playing with babies.
Oh.
But I realized that when I was in psychology and I was curious about those types of things, I had noticed that the dilation of a baby's eyes when you're staring into their eyes is actually a release. It's kind of like a cocktail of dopamine and oxytocin. It's a release of attachment. And when I found that out, I was like, oh, that makes so much sense. Like when you look at a baby in a store, they'll stare at you. And if it was an adult, you'd be like, this is uncomfortable. We should look away. I never look away until the baby does, because I know that what they're doing is their way of forming attachment and feeling safe. And so those little tidbits of information kind of pushed me in the direction of being like, okay, there's so much happening in those first 6 years, especially. There's so much development. They're rapidly growing. They're rapidly changing. And when I got into school, I just wanted to know as much as I could. I thought it was so fascinating.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Well, we're going to go ahead and take another short break, and we'll be right back on the Bible for Kids podcast.
It's hard to watch a child struggle with fear and anxiety. That's why author Lexi Young Pack was inspired to write What Do You Say to a Dragon after her daughter was wrestling with fear and anxiety. This whimsical picture book empowers children to express their emotions and use their imaginations to change the power dynamic of anxiety, while also giving parents a healthy approach to helping their kids face fears. In What Do You Say to a Dragon, a little boy wakes from a nightmare about a scary dragon and looks to his parents for comfort. His parents acknowledge his fear with a reply that models for all caregivers how to have healthy, healing discussions with kids. Instead of denying fear, kids will learn to face their fears and stand up to what scares them when appropriate. With easy-to-implement strategies, What Do You Say to a Dragon is a great story for anyone who needs help facing their dragons. What Do You Say to a Dragon is available now from your favorite bookseller.
Welcome back to the Bible for Kids podcast. Amy and I are speaking with Lexi Young Pack.
So Lexi, in the book, is there a favorite page or a passage that you want to share with us or talk to us about?
So I really like the page where the little boy says that he's discovered about himself that he is strong, bold, courageous, and curious too, and that he can do what is hard at the end of the day.
Aww.
And I think that there's a lot of power within realizing those things about ourselves, and the younger, the better. The younger that we recognize those qualities are within us, the stronger that they'll be as we grow. And so I really like that page because it just kind of brings together why facing your dragon is important, why you being the one to stand up and look at it in the eyes and to willingly face something that terrifies you, no matter how small, no matter if it's relationally having conversations with people, if it's scary for you as a kid to go up and ask for something you want, like even those tiny little things will build. And you can, as soon as you get your child to go up to face something that they are afraid of doing, and they've done it and they've overcome and they've realized that they're capable, then the next time when you're trying to push them a little bit further into something they're uncomfortable with, you can say, remember that time you thought you couldn't, you thought you weren't capable, you thought you weren't brave, and you thought that what would happen when you actually tried would be something that didn't happen. What happened? You did it. How did you feel when you did it? And you can pull from those experiences. But if you don't have the experiences, then you're pulling from previous affirmations that they haven't yet encountered for themselves. So it's the experiences of saying, oh, I realized something about this. It was me who was brave. My mom didn't just tell me I'm brave because I didn't actually do anything. I'm actually brave because I did it. And I remember doing it. And I remember the feeling after I did it.
Right.
And so I do know that I can enter into this next scenario, and I trust that my parent is going to bring me into something I can do because they did it before and because I did it before.
Yeah. And that really touches on my next question, because I was going to ask about practical methods or statements or questions that parents can use when we see that our kids are facing fear and anxiety. And what you're saying is a lot of that is just kind of building on those previous experiences to be able to point back to, so they can, kind of really realize that, okay, I've been through this once, I can be through it again, which as an adult, I mean, that's, kind of going through COVID and when I was dealing with my kids and my students, just as an adult, knowing that I've had a lifetime of experience where things have not gone well for a while, and you kind of feel like, okay, life is hard right now, but then you realize, eventually it's gonna get better, that type of thing. So I don't know, maybe just what are some of those, touch on those practical methods?
I think that I talk about Vivian a lot because Xander is only 3. He's hard. He's entering the phase, but he doesn't really get it yet. But we have had experiences with Vivian that so I always say I watch for their curiosity. I watch for what piques their interest, and then I monopolize it as soon as it happens. So one of those for Vivian was she wanted to ride her bike. She always was sitting on the back of mine, and she decided, I don't want to sit on the back anymore. Like, I want to ride with the family. And the process of teaching her how to ride a bike was extremely difficult. She cried a lot. It took us hours, but when we dedicate, that's what I was saying about time, is one of the things that matters to us is when they're ready to do something, following through with it, no matter how tough it gets for them. And with Vivian, she realized I could fall, and she said, I'm done. And we said, this is a part of learning how to ride a bike, and we're not going to let you be done. It took us 3 days, and we took breaks when we really, truly needed to. But after 3 days, she was riding her bike by herself. She was stopping her bike by herself, and she was 4.5 years old.
Nice.
And she...
Not diving into the bushes to stop herself.
She was not diving. That was not that one. My next one, Xander, he will be like that. But Vivian was not. And so we had that experience. She learned how to ride her bike. And the next thing she said, we lived pretty close to our parents, but it was still a ways. She said, Daddy, I would like to ride my bike to Grandma and Grandpa's house. And he was like, interesting. It's back roads. There's a lot of like country roads, but it's a progressive hill up to their house. In total, it's 12 miles.
Wow. And
so at 5, she and her dad got on the bikes, and he said, okay. And he said to me, this kind of makes me a little bit nervous because we're on backcountry roads. And she has to go up a hill the whole way. And I said, it makes me nervous too, but I can always come pick you up with the truck, and we can stick your bikes in and you can be done. At least we give her the opportunity to say what she wants and to try.
Yeah.
And she did it. It was a hot day. They took, I think, 3 hours, and we didn't tell anyone they were coming. So me and my son went ahead of them, and he texted me, we're right around the corner. And I had everyone come out of the house and watch as this 5-year-old comes after a 12-mile bike ride with her dad. And the experience of her doing that for herself. And then I can pull on that. And that's something that she feels so deeply. You didn't want to ride your bike because it was terrifying.
Yeah.
We knew you could do it, so we made you do it.
Yeah.
That 12-mile bike ride, adults haven't done that. Like, there's something so strong in you. You wanted it. You fought for it. You did it. And that takes time, and it takes bravery on the parents' part. And it's so important. And it's been so rewarding.
Yeah. And so as parents, we have those opportunities every single day, probably, for something that our child wants to do. And so really our job is to just pick up on those things and maybe not follow through on all of them, but just help them to follow through on the ones that will be healthy for them and rewarding. And,
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's so important. And for us as adults too, following through on those things, just helps to build our confidence and, for us and for our kids. So as a parent, how have you had to deal with your own fears, and how does that translate to how you're raising your kids?
I have very drastically embraced my fears. When I got married to my husband, I was really young. I was 21. And he came from a different side of the spectrum. He has fears, but they do not show up like mine. And he is very adventurous and really likes to do things that push the limits of his capabilities. And that was not what I was. That's not the way I was. That wasn't my inclination. And so it was fine to keep those things separate. But then once you have a child and you are raising that child with another person who has a very different inclination than you do, you either find a way to figure it out and to come together and figure out how to raise them.
We are not doing baby skydiving this weekend. I am sorry.
So you either get to that point of being like, okay, this is where I can reach my max, but I have to be worked into it slowly. Also had to realize that there was a ton inside of me that had been told that if I'm a good mother, I will keep my kids safe. And if I'm a good mother, I won't let them suffer. And if I'm a good mother, I will keep them from feeling pain. And so I had to unlearn a lot of those things, because what was being produced within my own children was not what I was wanting for them. It was creating a sense of fear over things that they didn't need to have fear about. And so I had to recognize that and then say, if I am the one perpetuating a cycle of fear that I've had in my own life, and my husband is able to enter into this with them and not project that fear, I need to walk away until I can come back and actually be helpful. And that takes a lot of humility to do that as a parent. And to recognize when you're actually creating something that's not healthy for your kids. And so at first I wanted to say, like, of course I need to be here, because what if you don't do what's right for them when I know what's right for them? and so it takes a lot of trust within your partnership to actually come to the other side, especially if fear is something that you hold on to and your spouse maybe doesn't as much. I had to admit that I didn't believe he cared as much as I did. And that his love wasn't as good as mine, because I was going to keep them safe. And he kept trying to do stuff that they could get hurt from. And so I had to reform the way that I thought about it. And that made a huge difference in our marriage. And it made a huge difference for our kids, because now they didn't look to me when they got scared to say, Mommy's going to get me out of this. They looked at me and my face says, I believe that you can do this. And it makes the entire difference, especially for Vivian. She said to me before, Mommy, if you were afraid when you asked me to do something, I would not do it. She's like, if you didn't believe that I could do it, I would not do it.
Yeah.
So you're gonna jump off that high dive, are you?
But I think that's so important, not just for our kids, but for our marriages too. It's just to realize that just because you don't agree necessarily with what the other parent is doing, that maybe you should just change your perspective a little bit. Because I think just in general, dads are a little more adventurous. I have 2 boys. So the things that he thinks that our boys need, and moms, we're more like nurturing and use your manners and be polite. And boys, are just different creatures. So I think that is just so important. And all of this, just about being intentional with our kids and helping them to push boundaries safely and encouraging them in their confidence. I think all of this is just so important for our kids and our families. So Lexi, tell our listeners where they can connect with you and where they can find your books. Or your book.
So I have, my book so far.
So far.
Well, there will be others. There will be.
So I have a website set up. It is lexiyoungpack.com. And on there, you'll find more information about me. You'll find where to find the books. I'm also on Instagram at Lexi Young Pack. And it's connected to my Facebook. I'm less active on my Facebook than I am on within my website. But there's also, you can connect via email. I have an email subscription thing that will kind of connect with some of these ideas. My goal is I want to create a conversation with parents that will not tell them how to do things, but create questions that say, oh, why do I do these things? And maybe there's something else out there that is going to make my life easier and is going to be more fulfilling for me and my kids. And so those are the conversations I want to keep having with people. And that's where my passion is.
Well, thank you so much, Lexi, for being with us today. And listeners, we're always giving away free stuff on our socials. So be sure to follow us on Instagram or Facebook at The Bible for Kids, or on our website, thebibleforkids.com. Thanks again, Lexi, and we'll see y'all next time.
Thanks for listening to the Bible for Kids podcast with Amy Parker and Mike Nawrocki. Be sure to connect with The Bible for Kids on Instagram, Facebook, and at thebibleforkids.com. The Bible for Kids podcast is powered by the Christian Parenting Podcast Network. Find out more at christianparenting.org. Our show is also available on waynation.com.
Christian Parenting.